Armstrong was an American hero, albeit, according to his family, a reluctant one. But fitting to his immortal words, one giant leap for mankind, he would ultimately be decorated by 17 countries. His mission to the moon, along with Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, inspired a generation to believe anything was possible. And so there was great sadness today when we learned Neil Armstrong was dead at the age of 82 from complications related to a recent heart operation.
The moment was the culmination of a decade-long Cold War space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the fulfillment of a pledge made by President John F. Kennedy.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Neil Alden Armstrong was a boy from the American heartland, born in Wapakoneta, Ohio. He built model airplanes as a child, became a pilot as a teenager, and flew combat missions for the U.S. Navy in the Korean War. He joined the astronaut program, making his first foray into space aboard Gemini 8 in 1966. Armstrong and fellow astronaut Buzz Aldrin spent just hours on the lunar surface before returning to the Apollo capsule piloted by Michael Collins and heading home to Earth. Armstrong was a modest man and lived a quiet life after his historic trip to the moon. He was a university professor and rarely appeared or spoke in public.
The bravery of Armstrong and his fellow astronauts was made clear when speaking years later. He explained how he thought there was a 90% chance of getting back to Earth. He also stressed the importance of that journey for space exploration and easing international relations between Russia and America.
It was a diversion which prevented a war. Nonetheless, it was a diversion. It was intense, and it did allow to both sides to take the high road with the objectives of science and learning and exploration. Eventually, it provided a mechanism for engendering cooperation between former adversaries. In that sense, among others, it was an exceptional national investment for both sides.
On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong made history as the commander of the Apollo 11 spacecraft, taking those first small steps that were to become the most famous few seconds of footage ever to be broadcast live. He and fellow astronaut Buzz Aldrin spent nearly 3 hours walking on the moon. Aldrin's wife remembers him fondly.
The astronauts were a wonderful group. They were all very close as a group because it was very unusual. There were 12 men that walked on the moon, and Buzz and Neil were in the first trip. It's just so shocking to me today when someone called me early on, because you just don't want to see these great heroes go.
Forward, drift into the right a little.
The landing almost did not happen. Apollo's crude computer was steering Armstrong and Aldrin toward a boulder field. Armstrong took over control and went shooting over the lunar surface, the ship gulping fuel as he went.
Rocket 1201 alarm.
He touched down just 17 seconds before Mission Control would have told him to abort.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
He would later say the landing was far more challenging than climbing down to the surface. He claims he did not settle on what to say until the last minute.
Neil Armstrong would later say the experience made him feel very, very small.
The important achievement of Apollo was a demonstration that humanity is not forever chained to this planet, and our visions go rather further than that, and our opportunities are unlimited.
He retired as a pilot and from NASA soon after the mission, taking up a teaching position at the University of Cincinnati. He also served on the boards of several companies, but declined numerous offers to join advertising campaigns, and even sued people who tried to make money from his image. Neil Armstrong had 3 children with his first wife. He married again in 1994. In a statement, Neil Armstrong's family said He served his nation proudly as a Navy fighter pilot, test pilot and astronaut.
President Barack Obama called him one of the greatest American heroes of all time. It was a label that Armstrong himself was never comfortable with. He shunned the limelight for years after that famous flight, refusing to give interviews or sign autographs.
Armstrong's family announced his death on Saturday, but did not specify when or where he died. They said he had undergone heart bypass surgery earlier this month.
NASA Administrator Charles Bolden said as long as there are history books, Neil Armstrong will be included in them. As we enter this next era of space exploration, we do so standing on the shoulders of Neil Armstrong. Michael Collins, who flew to the moon with Armstrong and Aldrin, said he was the best and I'll miss him terribly. John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth, said, "When I think of Neil, I think of someone who for our country was dedicated enough to dare greatly."
Yeah, I'm just so surprised. I mean, what an unbelievable figure he was to the United States and to America.
We're sad to hear about it. He was certainly a pioneer, and we all respected him in that day and age. Someone's got to take that first step. And in that perspective, that's Neil Armstrong. He's taking that first step. And so we remember that when he passes, that we need to just keep walking so mankind can come and become better.
Well, I was a 9-year-old kid, right? That was a big remembrance for us. We all sat around the TV and we all watched the whole process, and it was a big deal. It still is a big deal.